أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So inshallah we will continue with the 20th word. Okay, we will continue with the page 266, which is another miracle of Prophet Solomon, peace be upon him. And the verse is, said one who had knowledge of the book, I will bring it to you in the twinkling of an eye. Then when Solomon saw it placed firmly before him.
And for example, the verse, said one who had knowledge of the book, I will bring it to you in the twinkling of an eye. Then when Solomon saw it placed firmly before him. Which points to the following wondrous event. In order to attract Bilqis' throne to him, one of Solomon's, peace be upon him, ministers, who was versed in the science of attraction, said, I'll have the throne here before you before you can blink your eyes. The verse suggests, then, that it is possible to bring either things themselves or their images to one instantaneously from far away, and it is a fact that Almighty God bestowed this ability on Solomon, peace be upon him, in the form of a miracle, to establish his innocence and justice. For being honored with rulership as well as his messengership, Solomon could in this way himself be informed of events in all the regions of his extensive dominions, and see the condition of his subjects and hear of their ills. That means, if man relies on Almighty God and asks it of him with the tongue of his innate capacity, like Solomon, peace be upon him, asks for it with the tongue of his chastity, and if he conforms to his laws of wisdom in the universe, the world may become like a town for him. That is to say, while Bilqis' throne was in Yemen, it was instantaneously present in Damascus, or its image was, and it was seen. The images of the men around the throne were also certainly conveyed there, and their voices heard. This therefore indicates splendidly the attraction of images and sounds from long distances, and in effect says, O kings and rulers, if you wish to act with pure justice, endeavor to see and understand the face of the earth in all its details like Solomon. For by rising to the level of being informed whenever he wishes about every part of his realm, a just ruler and king who cherishes his subjects will avoid inequity and may rule with complete justice. And Almighty God in effect says through the elusive tongue of the verse, O sons of Adam, I bestowed on one of my servants a broad realm, and so that he could act completely justly within it. I allowed him to know personally of all situations and events that occurred there. And since I have given all men the innate capacity to be vicegerent of the earth, I gave them also the ability to see, consider, and understand the whole face of the earth in accordance with that ability. For my wisdom requires this. If individuals do not reach that point, men may reach it as a race. And if they do not reach it physically, the saints may reach it in meaning, in which case you may take advantage of this great bounty. Come on, let's see you do it. On condition you do not neglect your duties of worship, strive to transform the face of the earth into a garden, every part of which you may see, and the sounds of every corner of which you may hear. Heed the decree of the most merciful. It is he who has made the earth manageable for you. Should I stop it?
Just read the verse and we can stop.
It is he who has made the earth manageable for you. So traverse its tracks and enjoy of the sustenance which he furnishes. But unto him is the resurrection.
So, sections about, the prophetic miracles, the second station. And as you said, the verse that he quotes, nor anything fresh or dry, but it is in a clear record. And I think the verse is I keep forgetting if the verse is Kitabun Mubin, but in terms of what it refers to as, yeah, Kitabun Mubin. Or in other words, this station's about how the verses of the Quran, as it pertains to, he's using the examples of the prophetic miracles that are mentioned in the Quran, how they really are not, historical per se. They're not restricted or confined to some sort of space and time in the past, but they sort of encompass the very nature of the existence of the universe. There are certain principles that take place and that we've kind of talked about, like healing or cures or travel that the prophets display. But the most important aspect of the matter that Nursi always points out is, how it's both spiritual and material progress, in that the most important aspect is to whom does one attribute these qualities to, the qualities of what's things that we're able to utilize in the existence, like transportation or medicine, or material, or industry. Like last week we talked about iron or copper. So what Abdurrahman read this time was about the verse, "I will bring it to you in the twinkling of an eye." Then when Solomon saw it, placed it firmly before him. So just my initial thoughts before if anybody else wants to chime in. But again, it's talking about, he addresses the notion of attraction, or bringing things that are distant close. And while Nursi has an interesting interpretation, I mean, he didn't live in the time of the technological age. And what I mean by technological, I mean the computer age, the information age. And to me, it's interesting. He's saying to bring things close, images. I kind of take that as like, we're able to have this conversation online while being so far away. Are you able to have a video or look at a video or a video chat with somebody so far, halfway across the world, or see some image on a computer? But in any case, how you interpret that, not as relevant as the fact that he says that Almighty God bestowed this ability on Solomon, peace be upon him, in the form of a miracle, to establish his innocence and justice. For being honored with rulership as well as his messengership, Solomon could in this way himself be informed of events in all the regions of his extensive dominions, and see the conditions of his subjects and hear of their ills. So to me, the emphasis Nursi is putting upon is Almighty God bestowed. So there's the nature of this, what happened cannot be attributed to Solomon nor to the thing themselves, but really his sort of act of creation, how he gives existence to things. And it's a reflection of, I'm not quite sure, maybe someone else has thoughts, but what he means by innocence, what is Solomon's innocence, or justice, but maybe the innocence and justice of his rule, in that he's not doing things for his own self, but to, the establishment of the truth, or to represent who the creator of the universe is on this earth. That's his prophecy. And this is a sort of a recognition or an acknowledgement and confirmation of his prophecy to the people. That what he's saying is true. Look how he brings two things that he has no control over together from such far distances. But that's what I initially took away. I don't know if anybody else has any initial thoughts before if we want to go through the paragraph itself.
I think this verse in particular has always been, I've been very curious about it because of the way that it describes the whole process of it. I mean, the main takeaway is that, I mean, there's like so many takeaways from this, but like the main takeaway is that to attribute all the good things and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to test you to see if you would be thankful or not. That's like the following verse is basically, but there's a lot of scholars that go back and forth between who is the person that actually brought the throne of Bilqis. And so some people say that it's Sulaiman himself, that he asked them first and then none of them answered and he himself did it. Other people say that the description is and said the one who had knowledge of the book. And so what some people are saying is that this is actually not a miracle of Sulaiman, but this is some knowledge that that the person was able to transport this was able to do for an inanimate object. And so that's interesting from, I guess it's not the main takeaway, but that's the interesting part, is that this could potentially be replicated down the line. And one example of this is, for example, when we, like you mentioned, like when we see like a TV screen, like we were able to watch a match that's millions of miles away, but we're able to watch it instantaneously. Even like before the eye blinks, right? Like you can see like Messi score the goal, all that stuff that's not happening here. And so potentially this is like one of the sciences that could, is from the book. And I'm also interested about the, like, what does it mean by the book in the verse? I'm not sure, because the same word, the book, comes up after all the letters. The first, so like in the Quran, like it says Alif Lam Mim Dhalika al-Kitabu la rayba fih. So I mean, I don't know enough to sort of interpret it, but it's an interesting that word comes after these verses that have like the letters right before them. I don't know what that means, so all I can say is Subhanallah, and those are my thoughts. I don't.
So these are it's an interesting question. I guess we can start with the verse itself. Before we do that, Aisha Noor says, read up to first 3 paragraphs of 265, but main focus is a verse about Solomon. Yeah, that's I think we'll talk about that. And then Asim asks, what is the science of attraction? Okay, so I guess we can come to those things. But the first thing, as you mentioned about the verse itself, said one who had knowledge of the book. To me, I'd like to hear other people's thoughts about what at least in Arabic, al-kitab, or the book. Kind of feel like even the should be capitalized. But the book, as Nursi always kind of points out in his writings to me, there are sort of there are 2 books. One is the speech, or the speech of the creator of the universe, and the other is sort of the manifest book, or the universe itself, the book of the universe. And in one sense, I think you could take it both ways. So if one has, I mean, the example is using Solomon, but Solomon to me is just a representation. He's like an archetype of every individual. If I have personally knowledge or some sort of understanding of how the world works, sort of the book of the universe, how things are brought into existence, how things are made, then I'm no different than Solomon in that I can bring something to you, bring it, whatever it is, doesn't matter, in the twinkling of an eye. And in another respect, to me, the book signifies, what does the thing mean? What does that mean? And that's what to me, that's the most important aspect of this second station, about what does the fact that this thing is taking place, what does it even mean? Because the fact it's happening, really, you have to ask the question, how is it even happening? It's questioning its existence. Like, how is this even possible, and what does this indicate? And Solomon in the verse has knowledge to me of both the books. You know, the book of the universe. He's able to he's able to see how the universe works, operates, and he's also able to understand what it means at the same time. That's why he can both have material progress, as Norsi says in the previous part of this section, but also have spiritual progress too, because he knows to whom must this action be attributed to. So that's why it can take place in the twinkling of an eye, because if you are aware of something or comprehend something, it happens in an instant. For example, if I'm like struck with an idea or have some sort of epiphany or understanding of the world, it happens in an instant. You can't, there's no time delay. It just happens in a twinkling of an eye. And the question then is, to whom do you attribute your understanding to, your comprehension, your idea to? So I think it could be taken that way, that verse in this way as well. So does anybody have any thoughts in addition? Nobody else?
So I want to pose a question. I guess it will become clearer as we study, but there's a clear connection that author makes between this miracle that we're studying and being just. Like he says, if you want to be just, or because he needed the justice and so on. So how do we see this connection? Like, what is the connection between the throne coming from one region to another, one place to another, and Solomon, peace be upon him, being a just ruler? Or how I'm going to get a guidance about being just from this verse?
So my understanding was what he was trying to say is that the fact that Sayyidina Sulaiman was able to ask this request, and the fact that he was able to be accomplished so quickly, is a sign sort of how he's just with his own subjects, and that because he basically is aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he's dealing with them, that when he basically stated this request, he said, which one of you will give me this throne before they come in? So two people volunteered. One person said, I'm the strongest, I can get to you from, and then the second person volunteered, and indeed it was that way. And so I think that could potentially explain what the author is trying to say in terms of that this could be a potential sign of justice, that his relationship with the people around him and everyone around him. So my thinking is, let's just say the opposite. Let's just say the ruler was so unjust and wanted to do this. And that the ruler was doing this out of pure material gain. So meaning that, he wanted to get the throne over here to take over the other country for whatever reason. I wouldn't be able to imagine that to have so many people around him to say this, but that I don't know. This is sort of how I'm thinking.
So that's an interesting question, because for example, if I do something which, in the same way, let's say, if I bring something distant near, for example, in an instant, as Solomon does that, make me just? Let's say I don't even recognize Solomon. I don't recognize prophecy. Forget about Solomon. I don't recognize prophecy. I don't acknowledge creatorship over the universe. How does that make one just? I think that's really the question Birkan's asking. How does this sort of validate or certify one's justice? And I think the question really begs, what what does Norsi mean by one being just? Is it being just with, you know, what things mean? Being just with, you know, as in like you after you rightfully sort of interpret how things are meant to be interpreted or understood, or do you sort of take things for their own sake? For example, you said if you use something to dominate over another, that's in a sense looking to things for their own sake, you know, being self-centered. There's no creator present in that sort of conversation. So is one just there? So I mean, these just some thoughts what Birkan was asking, but I don't know if anybody has thoughts about that. What does that mean to them?
I was just gonna say it's going to be a conversation. I want to get
no, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think just maybe like one definition of just could be to use things for its rightful purpose, and in a way that Sayyidina Sulaiman is demonstrating that he's using these efforts in the rightful purpose that it's supposed to be used. And I guess injustice would be to use things in the wrong purpose, or not use things in a way that doesn't fulfill its purpose. And so, for example, like the Quran will say like that someone is unjust to themselves. So meaning that they're using things that were meant for a purpose for themselves incorrectly, or using it for the wrong purpose. So in this case, he's using it for the right purposes, and then he recognizes that and gives the right weight or value to what he's doing, and recognizes that whether if he actually brought the throne, or if someone else under him brought the throne, that this was a test to either think or to see if he's going to be thankful or not. So,
Suhail, if you want to say something, I will wait for you. Otherwise,
no, I couldn't hear you. You had cut out. I didn't know if that was my connection or your guys' connection.
Can you hear us right now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
So just like I'm thinking aloud, because I don't have a clear answer, but so that the parts in the text that he makes the connection with the justice. Let me read a few of the sentences from the text. For being honored with rulership as well as his messengership, Solomon could in this way himself be informed of events in all the regions of his extensive dominions. So being informed about everything, everyone in his dominions, and see the condition of his subjects and hear of their ills. And through this, as far as I understand, the author is suggesting he can be just because he's informed about every corner of his dominion. He knows about the people, he knows about their desires, their needs, and so on. Therefore, he can act justly. In the next paragraph, author also says, let me start from the last sentence of the previous paragraph. This therefore indicates splendidly the attraction of images and sounds from long distances, and in effect says, O kings and rulers, if you wish to act with pure justice, endeavor to see and understand the face of the earth in all its details. Try to see, put some effort to see and understand the face of the earth in all its details, like Solomon. For by rising to the level of being informed whenever he wishes about every part of his realm, so whenever Solomon wants to see something, he was able to see. A just ruler and a king who cherishes his subjects will avoid inequity and may rule with complete justice. So as if author making a connection between like being just and being able to see and think or event from all aspects. So I'm trying to understand, like in my condition, in my reality, like in workplace especially, like we have all these conversations. My friend says, or I say to them that, we should act justly, or let's be just. Let's not be step on someone else's foot or something, things like this. And what we mean there, like, usually is, at least to me, like when I act unjustly, it's usually when I follow the immediate desire I have. Like I want to do something, and that's the right thing to do because I want to do it that way. Or I contemplate a little bit. I say, okay, this is the conclusion I drive, so I will act accordingly. And this is the truth. Why? Because I come up with this assertion, this conclusion. And I guess the author here is saying that if you want to really be just in the real sense, you should look at the event or the thing from all these different aspects. So in sense, like try to see what you are in right now from Belkis' perspectives as well. So maybe, I don't have a clear answer to the question, but these are some ideas that came to my mind while listening to you guys.
I'm not sure like how he arrived to justice from the verse. That's the question mark for me. But
That's a translation thing, I guess. It's my guess.
I don't know.
Does it say in Turkish justice, or is it some other word?
Yeah, like the original language, he talks about justice as well.
What's the word?
Adalet.
Oh, okay.
But whatever the reason that he arrived there, true justice is only possible to have the knowledge of the things. There may be an event that looks to like that may have like different aspects, and it may look to very like many different people. And if you have just a piece of information about just one side of the story, just like from the experience, you know that like it's very likely that you may arrive to a conclusion that may not be true or that may not be just. So that's why I can understand like why he's emphasizing on the justice together with the the fact that like he has the ability to get information from every corner of his like dominion, and that's the only way that you can truly be a true like just ruler, because you are able to see the true nature of the events or the things in the dominion. That's the only thing that kind of attracted my attention in this text, that like knowledge, you cannot be just without knowledge. So knowledge and justice, like they are like intertwined. But I am not sure why he's discussing the justice within this context now. With it, like in the context of this verse.
I'm going to mute us. There are some people raising hands.
Yeah. Before Aishanur, you go, I was to say one thing to what you're saying. Maybe it's related to innocence and justice, in that he's innocent or he's unbiased as to his perception or view of things. And that's what makes him just, because he takes, as Berkman says, all things into consideration. All vantage points. He's not biased and comes to a conclusion just on from one perspective. But go ahead, Aishanur.
Assalamualaikum. Um, yeah, just to share, I guess, some thoughts on the text so far. You know, uh, and I don't know if this directly contributes to the topics that or the questions that people have been raising, but when I think about it, it's talking about Solomon, Prophet Sulaiman, and like his rulership or dominion, etc., etc. And when I think of myself, I'm not a ruler. I'm not a king. I have no dominion over any land, let alone a single property. But I do have, or I can have at most, knowledge on, I guess, rulership to an extent, in some context of my own self, of my internal state of being. So I was just thinking about, along also the lines of justice, how, going back to the part that Brother Birkan had read about how if you wish to act with pure justice, endeavor to see and understand the face of the earth in all its details like Solomon. To an extent that to me seems like to act justly means to, at least existential justice would be to attribute things and qualities that I see to their rightful owner, to their rightful source of existence. And so when I examine the dominion of my own self, my own internal states and feelings, emotions, anxieties, whatever, the most perhaps important sphere of justice that I can directly implement towards is, again, the sphere of my own self. And what does it mean to act justly in terms of my own existence? It comes to mind, again, recognizing and acknowledging the details, perhaps, or the different facets and qualities that I see in myself, to their rightful owner. And even if, I'm extending that to beyond just myself, I was understanding the text saying, understanding the face of the earth in all its details in terms of understanding creation, again, in terms of what meanings they reflect onto me. Or else, I don't, that's my liking, but I don't know much about Bilqis or anyone else here. But of course there was the other point earlier on raised about, also as the text was being read, I was thinking about, I guess, the practical technological side of it, in that, it seems very much like what we do here, me hearing sounds from all over the country, or maybe even the world, from a small device, or at different points, images, but just within, I guess, the context of approaching it in terms of my own state of being. I think, like, for me, I need to return to the idea of what is it that which will be brought to me in the twinkling of an eye, and how does that, how do I bring it about, or what is it that brings it about, and what is it that needs to be brought about? I don't know if that was very coherent, but just wanted to share his thoughts. Thanks.
No, thank you. That's some interesting thoughts. Go ahead, Birkan. Oh, actually, but before you go ahead, Muhammad Said had a comment. He said that his definition of justice was giving the right of the capacities within me and in the things around. I guess, Muhammad Said, if you want to talk after Birkan, I'd like to hear you. Or after Yusuf. Birkan lowered his hand. Yusuf, I guess you can go ahead.
Okay. I have a small, this is Azman speaking, small addition. So, like, Solomon was a king or was a ruler, but, like, at the same time, he was a prophet, and he was in Abd, right? So his kingship is one thing, but like at the same time, like what does this really mean? Like in terms of like his being a prophet and up at the same time. And also like in the next paragraph, Nursi kind of ties this with man being a vicegerent on earth. And in that sense, what does it really like have to do with me? And as a vicegerent, do I have the rulership over the rest of the creation, rest of the beings? So when I like think about this within that context, the question comes to my mind. In order for Solomon to rule his dominion justly, he had to have the knowledge of all the things and events as it is. And that miracle or that event that like the verse refers to is in a way telling you that he has that access to the things as it is, like in terms of like the image and the sound. So he can get the true information of the things in a way. So like, what does that really mean within my own context? Like if I am a vicegerent and if I have a like rulership over the rest of the creation because I have an free will that I can make choices and like decisions over the rest of the stuff, and there's nothing else in the creation as far as I observe that has the same ability. So what does it mean for me to have the true like knowledge of the things in the creation? And just tying back to like what brother said earlier, is like when he talks about justice, like he talked about the purpose or being in line with the purpose of the things. In that case, like what does it really mean, what the purpose is, first of all, and what does it really mean to be just to the rest of the creation that I have disposal over, and my relationship with them to be just to the rest of the creation.
What you're saying brought some thoughts also to tie into what Aisha Noor said. Aisha Noor said, you don't feel like you're a ruler, and then you brought up the fact of, you being a vicegerent on earth. I think, at least to me, and maybe this is just how I see the verse, is every human being, as you said, through free choice, they do have sort of rulership, or they have a choice, dominion over how they interpret things or see things. So maybe they don't have material power, like I can't move the mountains, or I can't tell somebody else what to do, or I can't maybe govern people as I wish. But to me, as an individual, I can say that this is how I understand the world. I am making my own choice, and nobody can tell me how to understand the world because it belongs to me. I have my own sovereignty, how I interpret things. And the question is then, the entire universe is at my hands in terms of how to interpret or understand them. What do they really mean? What do they indicate? What do they point to? And I think to have rulership in that sense, to have dominion over understanding, to use your human qualities to sort of Eichner says rulership over the utilization of my human qualities, exactly, over my how I feel, how I process or think. I have rulership, but to use it in the appropriate way requires me both to be both innocent and just. Innocent in the sense that, I'm not biased per se, and just in the sense that I take all things into account when I make a conclusion, when I come to a conclusion about things. And when I'm able to do that, as Solomon does, I'm able to, for example, I'm able to look at the stars billions of light years away and I can extract meaning from it, as you said, Osman, like knowledge. There's something there, and I can bring it to me in a twinkling of an eye. I can understand it in an instant. It happens instantaneously, even though it's so far away. I can bring it to me on, terrestrially speaking. I'm living on this earth, and I can share it with others, which in a sense is miraculous when you think about it. The fact that I can understand things that are so distant from me, or conceptualize or imagine them. I mean, you have to question somebody's materialist view of the world then. If I can really sort of take, something distant, sound or light or an image, and within my own self, comprehend it, extract its meaning, and understand it. And I think the conclusion one eventually comes up with is that, as Aisha was saying, I use these qualities that I have to understand those qualities in which the creator of the universe manifests himself, the qualities that the creator of the universe utilizes in his demonstration with the existence of the universe. So that's, to tie what everybody's saying together, but Birkan, go ahead.
So your example you gave that we look at the stars and see a billion light years away. I guess this is really interesting because we usually take things as so lightly, and you correct me once. How should I say it correctly? Take things lightly. Okay. Sorry for at the same time, I'm trying to learn English. So
take things for granted.
We take things granted, and once we realize that we can do things, we take them really lightly, like as if it's nothing. But the fact that we can look at the stars, we can understand them, make sense of them. The fact that I can study the universe, study the environment around me, the things around me. The fact that I can understand emotions of my friends by just looking at them. So knowing about their insight, like their insight is brought to me. Like there's no end about the human being and his knowledge. There's no end. Especially today, right? Everybody says it's an era of information, era of something. Doesn't matter. So the things that we can know, we can be aware of, it's unlimited. It's unbelievable. We can even have a knowledge of past. We can even have a knowledge of future. Like we have these weather forecasts. They, hold or don't, doesn't matter. Like we have a kind of access to future. Not only this present moment. So it's like in all sense, it's unlimited. It's amazing. And I guess the question is like, why? Why am I loaded with all this knowledge, with all this information? What is the point? Why I am studying? Why I am learning things? An author here says, really interestingly, the last paragraph that we've read, O sons of Adam, I bestowed on one of my servants a broad realm, and so that he could act completely justly. So the author is defining the purpose here. So that he could act justly within it, I allowed him to know personally of all situations and events that occurred there. So that he could act justly, I teach him, I showed him everything taking place. And since I have given all men the innate capacity to be vicegerent of the earth, I gave them also the ability to see, consider, and understand the whole face of the earth in accordance with that ability. The rest is also interesting, for my wisdom requires this part, but even this first part, I guess he's telling me that it's not only Solomon, but isn't it true for you as well? Like asking myself, is it the case that I have a connection, I have a sense of, like I have an ability to see, consider, and understand things around me, and this around is so wide, like I can see, consider, and understand the almost entire universe, if I wish. And he's telling me that this is for a reason. And what is the reason? So that you can act justly. So I guess this is really interesting. Like it's becoming interesting. When I first read this, like I didn't get this, but maybe I'm making up, so please correct me. But he's telling me that all these things you're learning, all these things you're understanding, the things that you see shouldn't be wasted. You should see them as means to carry you to the justice. Be just. And then it goes back to, what Mohammed Said was saying, what Aisha Nur saying, and all others, the Osman, the Suhail. Like, what does it mean to be just? Like being just to yourself. Being just with your understanding of the reality. Being just with your capacities, what you have and what you don't have. Being just with your son, being just with your wife, just with your husband or your friends, because you know all this, because you can see, you can understand the entire universe. Be just. So I guess we don't have to, I'm not denying this aspect, but we don't have to go to this sci-fi aspect of it. Like, one day we will be able to see things far away. We can already see things far away. Right? Even just the mere fact that I can communicate with my friends, although they are so far from me, it's enough to be just, I guess.
And how a person can sneeze in China and say Alhamdulillah, and a person, low can say Alhamdulillah, the same, over the phone.
Yeah, that's. I think it makes you, when you think about it, you have to really question those that sort of take a materialist view of the world rather than a prophetic view, like the view of Solomon. The fact that you can communicate with things that are so distant and understand them. So the one thing I wanted to add, Asim brought up one thing, and I don't know if he wants to talk, but he says, what is the science of attraction? To me, at least from this conversation, that's what I understand to be the science of attraction, in that, as Birkan was saying, I can understand things and they don't sort of repel me. They don't try to avoid me. I can understand, for example, if I have a conversation with somebody, I could potentially understand them. It doesn't have to be foreign to me. Or if even something more simple, I can see how somebody feels, as Birkan was saying, by just looking at their sort of body language or their emotional expressions. It doesn't, if you are just in trying to understand it, being honest and sincere with yourself, with your human qualities, the ones that you have ownership over, then everything is sort of attracted to you. Everything is trying to sort of make known the potential of knowledge within you, I guess, or the knowledge that man has been bestowed as a reflection of an all-knowledgeable one. So I can comprehend all things to all extents in the universe. Not only can I comprehend, I guess, somebody's, like, let's say, happiness, but I can comprehend every person's individual happiness that they experience. to whatever degree or context. So somebody's happy because they did well on an exam, or somebody's happy because let's say they got, let's say, some sort of job they wanted, but they experienced something, some joy that I can comprehend specific to their context. It's all sort of within me to understand everything possible and that could ever happen. So to me, that's this, I guess, as I understand the science of attraction, that sort of truth doesn't repel me, doesn't say that it doesn't say I don't belong to you, but know that it's meant to be understood, and it's meant to be understood by you. So that's kind of how I understood at least the science of attraction. And then I guess one question I have is that, is it even possible then to be just unless you understand the potentiality of your knowledge? And the reason I ask this is because I think sometimes one can come to a conclusion about something and they can be so sure, but that possibly is because they don't really understand how maybe ignorant they are. For example, to me, it's the easy example to understand. But let's say an atheist says that, I don't believe there is a source of existence to the universe. He may be intelligent, but is he being just? And is he being unjust because he doesn't have a complete grasp of existence itself? So, Birkan, before you go on, thanks. Okay, go ahead, Birkan.
So, I was going to ask a few questions actually too. Again, I guess in this text, like the previous paragraphs that we have been studying, author is approaching it from, again, two perspectives. One is we can again take it as if actually he is asking for a scientific limit that human can reach. And the other one is, again, a meaning-wise, he is reading into the metaphoric explanation in here. So I will go with the second one, the metaphoric explanation. So if we ask, this was mentioned here and there before, so sorry for repetition. So if we ask, what is the dominion of Sulaiman to this existence? And because within this dominion, he is now talking about, there is another dominion, which is in the story, is Balqis. So, and if we take it very literally, we would say that, okay, there were two kingdoms. One kingdom is trying to crush the other kingdom for no reason. It's just like a power struggle. They have better resources, and it doesn't really sound like prophetic if there is no purpose of conquering something for the creator, whatever that means. So this reminded me of Surah Al-Mulk, again, the chapter of dominion. And the chapter of dominion starts with the verse which says, blessed be he in whose hands is dominion, and he over all things has power. So the creator, he is the one that's blessed, who has the whole dominion over everything, and he over all things has power. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. So he who created death and life, that he may try which of you is best indeed. So that he may try which of you is best indeed. And he is exalted in might, oft forgiving. So the verse that I would like to attract your attention to, the third verse, الذي خلق سبع سماوات طباقا. So he who created the seven heavens one above another. ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت. No want of proportion will you see in the creation of most gracious. You will not see any defects. فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور. This part that I would like to underline. So turn your vision again. Have you seen any flaw? Next verse says, ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير. Again, turn your vision a second time. Vision will come back to you dull and discomfited, in a state worn out. So you are sending your eyesight to the creation, trying to see if there is any defect. The verse is sort of challenging. Then your eyesight wanders around the existence and comes back to you and says that there is no defect. The dominion is his. So this verses of that we have been studying reminded me of that, because in the creation, I'm feeling like things are under somebody's control. But there is something far out there, which I think, let's say, I have been listening to a brother's podcast a few days ago. He was discussing the topic of evil. A tsunami happened somewhere. So this seems to be something out of dominion of the Creator to me. It's disturbing to me. So now my eyes goes there, sees and says that, wow, what sort of a God is that? Sort of discomforting. Now this verse is challenging me, saying that send your eyesight to there, just look at the existence, look at the creation. It is going to come back to you saying that I am very tired. I have looked all over the existence and I couldn't see any defect in the existence. And this goes back to the very first verse, which says, his is the dominion. So in this case of Sulaiman alayhi salam, so he was sending his sight to another dominion, bringing things from there immediately to make this sort of evaluation. So in my case, I should be, I guess now, because Aisha was also pointing to that, I am now applying how does this verse speak to me right now. So in my view, whose is the dominion in this existence? Is everything belongs to him, or is there things in this existence far away from me? Maybe I am happy with my Lord within my territory, but I don't have an answer to tsunami that happens there, or a child killed in a war, whatever. So this is saying that, and Nursi alludes to this at the third paragraph, try to make it that you see the whole existence, whole universe with a view that makes it visible to you so that you can make justice. Justice meaning that I'm going to be unjust if my conclusion would be there's cruelty in existence. This would be an unjust or unjust conclusion. So if I don't want to be unjust, I need to see the whole existence, because the balance appears in the whole. If I just focus on a single point, just a child being killed by a tyrant, if I focus in there, zoom in there, which most likely I will not see any mercy, any wisdom in that point, and I will arrive to an unjust conclusion. But if I look at the whole existence, if my eyesight collects like a bee collecting the pollen from flowers, if I collect data from the existence, then I will arrive to the just and balanced conclusion that there is no defect in this existence. The Creator is just, the Creator is merciful. Or let's put it this way, there must be a just Creator. There must exist a merciful Creator. Otherwise, the whole thing that I am observing wouldn't exist.
Can I just add something small? Like whether you look at the whole or you look at the pieces, I think there are two things. Like one, understanding the true reality of the things. What do they like really point to? What are the realities of the beings? Because if you have that true knowledge of the things, that is going to bring you closer to the justice. But like as opposed to this, one can, whether you're looking at the whole picture or you're looking at the pieces, in either case, you can still misconstruct some sort of understanding of the things in a way that will bring you like to a point that you may be unjust to yourself and also to the beings as well. So it seems like it's more like whether we have the like that, at least that's what the example is telling me, that Solomon has immediate access to the the events and the things. That's why he's able to be like pure and just. That to me, like it almost like points to the fact that he has the true reality of the things and the events, whatever that might be. Like I think if we are to understand that, like in the context of the Surah Al-Mulk, then seemingly we have a like power like over some sort of dominion, but all the dominion is his. Then what does that mean? Like within that context, understanding the reality of the things.
Can you maybe I didn't understand the question. Can you restate the question? Are you saying that if dominion and sovereignty belongs to him, then what can you possibly understand or have some sort of knowledge of? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like if all the sovereignty is his, all the dominion belongs to him, but at the same time, within this context, like Nurse says that we are the vicegerent and we have disposal like over the things in the creation. But at the same time, Quran is telling us that like his is all the dominions, right? So then how do you like bring those two understandings together and like and at the same, again, I'm just going to remind that like Solomon was a king, but at the same time he was a prophet. I think his like him being the prophet is a lot more, should be like more focused than his kingdom or being like him being a king. So like prophethood, God's like sovereignty over like all the dominions, and human being the like vicegerent on earth and having the ability or the disposal over the things, and knowledge of the like things or the like understanding the reality of the things and the justice. That is the, as far as I understand, that has been the context of the discussion. So like I don't know what I am saying.
Well, I think what you, at least how I understand the question, and then I'll get to Faraz, is that, you know, if, you know, what Yusuf was saying is that, you know, he has, you know, dominion and sovereignty over things, then, you know, how does that make an individual vicegerent? It seems, at least how I understand your question, I may be wrong, but it seems like there's a contradiction there. How can the human being be a vicegerent, and at the same time we're talking about how the things don't belong to to that vicegerent? The dominion and sovereignty belongs to their, you know, rightful owner and sustainer, the creator of the universe. So what are we really speaking about here? I mean, the way at least I understand it is that I think maybe the answer's in the question, in that I know of his necessary dominion and sovereignty not only through the universe but through me. So for example, you know, Solomon is a king. He's a prophet king. So in a sense, he knows of both the dominion and sovereignty of the creator of the universe over all things, in that, as you said, Solomon's able to have knowledge of all things. But he knows about the creator's dominion and sovereignty because he is, in a sense, a king. Like it's a sort of reflection, I guess. Like he's able to perceive or comprehend that through his own kingship. But he's a prophet king because this kingship that I somehow possess is not reflective of me, but it's reflective of the dominion and sovereignty of the creator of the universe. That's what makes him a prophet. So your question is valid, I think, but that's, to me, if you externalize, like you take vicegerency, like an individual, separate from the universe. But to me, knowing about dominion and sovereignty occurs through vicegerency. Dominion and sovereignty would be some sort of foreign concept to me. And yes, go ahead.
Let me try to like explain what I'm trying to say with an example. For example, Yusuf like mentioned about tsunami, right? there are two different approaches that I can take. One, it's an apparent evil because there is a damage and destruction, and that's how I what kind of understanding or knowledge I construct out of that event. But at the same time, that specific event may have like many different aspects and may look to many different people, or may have like a dimension that goes to the different areas. And as a as a vicegerent, like having the understanding that God is the absolute sovereignty and His is all the dominion, and even that tsunami wouldn't be able to happen out of His will and order, will bring another like understanding. And when you try to see the picture as a whole for that event, then it is very likely that you can understand the justice within the event rather than seeing it as an like evil act of destruction. That is why I was trying to point out that like when we usually at the beginning when I said like there may be like aspects that like looks to many different areas, and Solomon through the miracle is able to see the inner reality of the things that like the other people may not have access. That's why like he was a just ruler. It is the same thing for us. Like there may be an event in our lives that only we may be looking at the case from our own angle, our own perspective only, and constructing some sort of understanding based on that, but that may not necessarily the true reality of the event or the thing. So in order to attain justice, one may need to look at the event from very many different angles and perspectives to have the full 360-degree view of the situation. And within this context, it seems like this has something to do with like man being the vicegerent on earth, understanding, positioning yourself in the creation with some sort of duty, and understanding within the context of the Surah Al-Mulk, understanding that He is the absolute sovereignty, and you are just vicegerent on earth like for Him, then within that context that should, I guess, like mean something else.
Yeah, I'll get to Faraz right after this, but I think goes back to one of the question I had. Is there any sort of notion of justice? Is it possible to be just if that source of justice wasn't absolute? And I think that to me is really the crux of the question. So the human being, as you said, if he takes a particular perspective, so not absolute, he takes the perspective, let's say he was affected by the tsunami, maybe some of his relatives were taken away, were killed, or his house was destroyed, or maybe even he was killed. But from this, in the example, let's say he's alive and has time to reflect on it now. He takes his own perspective, so not the perspective of absolute. Is it even possible to be just then at that point? Because you can't, I think justice in and of itself, as you said, necessitates taking all perspectives. So when you try to take all perspectives, to me, as you're saying, that's the only way to be just, which is a reflection of its source, because the source is absolute, must be absolute. And by being absolute, you have complete conception or the complete encirclement of the knowledge of all things. So from the perspective of absolute, the absolute knows the existence of the tsunami and what all its meanings are, what it means to all individuals, all creatures, and in that regard, then I think you can understand. That's how one can be just with the existence of things, what they mean, by understanding that from where does that event come from. Otherwise, it's impossible to be just if you take a particular perspective, because there is no justice within particulars. There's no quality of justice within a particular self. It doesn't say, the human being can't say I'm just in and of my own self on my own accord. So that's kind of how I understood it. I don't know if yes, Birkan, go ahead.
So, and I guess on that we can maybe discuss the sentences that Nursi says, if individuals do not reach that point, men may reach it as a race. And if they do not reach it physically, the saints, they can do it like saints in meaning. I'm changing the translation a little bit based on the original text. They can try to attain it like saints in meaning. So I guess the in meaning part can be highlighted in here. Let's question. This is not to give an answer because I don't have a clear answer for that. But what does it mean that if individuals do not reach that point, men may reach it as a race? And if they do not reach it physically, the saints may reach it in meaning. And while answering that, we can also consider pay attention to the verse again. I will take you back to Surah Al-Mulk. الَّذِي خَلَقَ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ طِبَاقًا. So in there, it is saying that the heavens are created, 7 heavens are created one upon the other. And there is no contradiction between them. So, but then the next verse says that send your eye to the creation. So as if there's not a contrast of, there is no contradiction in sama, like the meaning aspect of things, there is no contradiction. Send your eyes to creation. But when you look at creation, I guess this goes back with what Brother Osman was saying, send your eyes to the creation, tsunami being part of the creation, or a newborn baby being part of the creation. Send your eyes to them, but don't look at their physical, or don't get stuck in their physical aspect only. Look at the sab'a samawat on top of them, meaning that their meaning aspect. So in the metaphor of a text, don't get stuck in the ink and paper, but try to understand the levels of meanings that the author has embedded into this ink and paper. So go on top of those 7 layers, multiple layers, and you are not going to find any contradiction in the meaning layers of this. So this is the aspect that you should be looking. Now taking it like this, so if individuals do not reach that point, now this is the question part that I'm asking, men may reach it as a race. Because the second part seems more clear. If not physically, then in terms of meaning, it is okay. But what does it mean that if not personally, as a whole humanity, you can reach this? What does that mean? I did not understand.
So I thought that that statement was related to this sentence before, where he talks about the vicegerent of the earth. And it sort of goes back to the purpose of like why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create us to begin with, and sort of debate of, not debate, but the question was arrived, like, that the angels, Malaika at that time said, are you going to create somebody who's going to kill, murder, etc., etc.?
Shed blood on earth.
Yeah, shed blood on earth. And so I think the purpose was inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. And I think I'm not entirely sure what vicegerent means, but my guess it means khalifa. So I think it's sort of so sort of the purpose of the human being is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also be a khalifa in this earth. And almost as if worshiping is not just prayer and not just like the prayer, the fasting, all that stuff, but also this other path that you become a khalifa in a certain domain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up for you, or a certain path that is, and you're a khalifa with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's. And in terms of being just in that area, I think one interpretation of justice would be to give each person the right in the rightful place. And I think so for example, the key about the looking at a tornado that rips through, or like a tsunami that rips through another country, and saying that's evil because it's causing damage. Well, in that scenario of like me judging the tornado, or me judging that this action is evil, who am I judging? And am I in a place where I can actually do that or say that? And the next thing is, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made all the creations, so I mean, He could do as He pleases with His creation. So our interpretation of evil or not evil or is sort of based off our own experiences, and we don't necessarily have that that place to it. So like there's a verse in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, like, and give and be pious to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or like be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the rightful piety. I'm probably not translating properly, but give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like the piety,
as He deserves.
As He deserves. Like, and when that verse came down, the companions and everybody were like, oh, this is not gonna, like, through their understanding of justice, when they heard that verse, they said, oh, this is like almost impossible. How can I? So then another verse said, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Or like, just do your best as much as you can in that to be like pious. Or so I think that's sort of my understanding of like, there are two things that we have the task to complete: being Khalifa and worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And almost you can't be, so there's a lot of people who are Khalifa but not necessarily doing it for the sake of Allah, or not necessarily worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or not necessarily doing it as a form of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but maybe as a worship to themselves or some desire or some other ambition that they have. And I think that's sort of what Sayyidina Sulaiman in this example kind of encompasses both of those. Like, he's a Khalifa in the literal sense of the word, that he has, this huge kingdom, and he has a kingdom that no one else is going to ever have after him. And he's also worshipful and aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in that way he's just that he knows exactly what his role is, what his purpose is, and he's fulfilling it.
At the risk, I guess, of being unjust, I kind of wanted to get to Faraz, but I know, Conley, you have your hand up, but Faraz had a comment. I don't know if he wants to speak, but he says, have you already talked about what is the justice that Solomon is able to do, meaning what is justice? I guess that's kind of what this conversation has been centered around, but do you have any comments now that you've kind of been listening for a while? Oh, please carry on. Okay. And then the other comment from Muhammad Said was, the very existence of me being able to have a conduct with the universe is a treatment of the owner of the universe. That is my understanding of being a vice. Jaron, so you're saying as if you're a recipient or a receiver from the owner of the universe, so a representative on behalf of Earth who receives. It's also an interesting sort of perspective on what it means to be a vicegerent on Earth. Conley, go ahead. I know you had your hand up for a while.
I just had a couple of ideas in response to the question about men achieving justice as a whole if individuals don't. And they're kind of simple. Like, the very first thing that came to mind was this principle called wisdom of the crowd. Like, if, just as a simple example, if you have like a jar of pennies or change, and you ask 1,000 people, how much money do you think is in this jar? You're going to have some people say $5,000 and some people say $3. But at the end, if you average all the 1,000 of them, you'll come to the right answer, or within a few pennies. It's really amazing how that works. Like, why would that be? But when you add the collective perspectives of multiple people, you get a whole lot closer to the right answer, and that's applicable to much more serious things than questions than just how much money is in a jar, or how many jelly beans, or whatever. And another thing, like, you think about a company or any collective endeavor where people begin to specialize and add their strengths together they often do accomplish, I mean, that's the only way some things that we do can be accomplished. So I guess I'm just wondering, it's kind of a crude thought, but if that could be something along the line, even systems of law or how could I put it? Not hierarchies, but sometimes, when people get together and form a system, often it's a lot better, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so that there might be some power, that synergistic power that the verse was speaking of, that men as a group can become aware of. This is, to what Suhail was saying, that it's impossible to achieve justice without seeing things from every perspective. I think that might be something along the lines of what the scripture was trying to say. So.
Thank you, Birkan. Interesting thoughts. Birkan, I'm guessing you want to respond, or you have some thoughts of your own?
So I think I will continue with what Conley was saying. So in terms of this, man may reach it as a race. I'll just take it a few sentences before. So, O sons of Adam, I bestowed on one of my servants a broad realm, and so that he could act completely justly within it, I allowed him to know personally of all situations and events that occur there. And since I have given all men the innate capacity to be Khalifa or vicegerent of the earth, since I have given all men the innate capacity to be vicegerent of the earth, I gave them also the ability to see, consider, and understand the whole face of the earth, in accordance with that ability. For my wisdom requires it. If individuals do not reach that point, so that refers to the ability to see, consider, and understand the whole face is given innately to everybody. See, consider, and understand the whole. But if individuals do not reach if individuals cannot reach the capacity to see and consider and understand the whole face of the earth, then he says, then they may reach it as a race. So one meaning that, along with what Conley was alluding to, I can also benefit from other people's perspectives about the existence, meaning of existence. This is, it's not that I will only try to, okay, I have my perspective, I am trying to understand, but as also Osman was saying, I will need to see the 360 degrees of the event to get a better understanding. That to some degree, let's say, I can handle the issue with a tornado, but I also know that not completely I'm able to see the big picture. This is why, for example, in this discussion, we are sitting together with other men or other people trying to see also their perspectives to complete the picture for ourselves. So I guess in this sense, yeah, a human. So anyways, okay. So yeah, for that, this collective endeavor of, for example, having discussions, or even, I guess, the emphasis of collectively worshiping, like the ritual worshiping being also encouraged to be done collectively, can also point to this meaning, saying that seek the meaning of existence together as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you both brought that up. Nursi also always emphasizes about the collective personality. So in that sense, the prophets, I think, they sort of reflect or demonstrate this sort of collective persona. They're able, I'm not a prophet, and in that respect, I have not been able to take, all things into account. Maybe it's potentially within me to do so, but, the prophets show that it's possible for one human being, a single human being, to sort of collectively to reflect on the collective reality of the whole universe. So in that sense, man can not only be an individual, but he can be a whole race at the same time. To look at it in a different way, the prophets sort of represent the race of the human species, just in one individual, and because they're able to sort of take a complete sort of perspective, as best as the human being can, of the events that take place, of the things that take place, of their meaning, and only in that way. And I think that's what makes them prophets, because only in that way can they connect to the to the source of existence of all things, because they're able to collectively take them all into account at the same time. Otherwise, what are you really speaking about then? And in another respect, I guess man may reach it as a race. Kind of like what Conley was saying. Everybody, I guess we're here as a group. Everybody has sort of a contribution that they sort of can make, and people all learn from everybody else's perspective, and in that regard, you reach it collectively together. Maybe you can't do it individually, but man can reach it collectively. I guess that's really the story of of scholarship, historical scholarship, that tries to endeavor to reach something greater than what they could sort of perceive by themselves. Not that they couldn't potentially do it, but as a collective, they could do it much more easily. So does anybody? I know we haven't heard from some people. I don't know if Faraz or Fariha, Muhammad Saeed, or Omar. Does anybody else want to add any comments here? Or Asim? Any thoughts? Okay. Well, Faraz, I think, generally we're just kind of the continuation of last week's conversation, but this week focused on more, I guess, several points. One, what does it mean? What does, I guess, the science of attraction mean? Or what does it mean for something distant to come close? And in that regard, how does that establish, or is that a reflection of one's innocence and justice? Or what does it mean to be just in that respect? If one is able to do that. I think we try to understand that through the example of Solomon and the throne, and Bilqis's throne. So I wanted to go on to, the last sentence of the paragraph we read. He says, on condition you do not neglect your duties of worship, strive to transform the face of the earth into a garden, every part of which you may see, and the sounds of every corner of which you may hear. He, the decree of the most merciful, it is he who has made the earth manageable for you, so traverse its tracks in the joy of the sustenance which he furnishes, but unto him is the resurrection. So I think that kind of it summarizes at least what we were talking about, in that do we see every sort of corner, every sort of point in the earth or the universe, and are we able to grasp it or comprehend it or take it into account when we try to understand something? Every sound or every sight, I was thinking, I guess we're all talking, sometimes maybe we don't really necessarily do that. Maybe we can talk about this, but then in the same vein, like, do I ever go outside and look up at the stars and take that into account? I think it means something different when you are really, as Nursi says, transforming the face of the earth into a garden, every part of which you may see. it's one thing to, I guess, speak about it, but it's another to sort of live it in reality. And I think that's kind of the example of Solomon, in that I mean, the human being is not just something he's like sort of thinking about, but he experiences it. So Solomon experienced something coming together, something coming close to him in a twinkling of an eye, you know. And is that something I experience on a day-to-day sort of basis? I don't know. Maybe that's just me thinking about it, but I don't know if anybody had thoughts about that or anything else about that sort of last paragraph. Awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the last paragraph, I'm still a little unclear on what the phrase means when he says after that man may reach it as a race, and then he says that, and if they do not, basically men, individuals do not reach this being, well, it physically, I took that as, you know, because every human being has that capacity of being the vicegerent, meaning that they have those human capacity in terms of their whatever they are, the tools and the senses that they have to really make sense of what this world means, and right, they are able to see and consider and understand what everything on the whole earth or in the universe, you know, how we can use it either in the practical terms or in the meaning wise also is there available for individuals to read. But then I don't understand exactly what he says, that if men do not reach it physically, the saints may reach that in meaning, although I see that everybody is capable of understanding what the whole earth kind of means. And even with the other, like in the sciences, we are also learning. Every time there's new discoveries, we get to know about that also. So just that part about the physically and the, what does he mean, like the saints may reach it in meaning? Because I think everybody is able to reach that meaning, so, unless the physically means something else.
I think Berkan may have an answer. Go ahead.
I guess the Yusuf said this earlier. There's a important problem with the translation here when he says, and if they do not reach physically, the saints may reach it in meaning. The right translation should be, and if they do not reach it physically, they may reach it in meaning like saints. So he doesn't say saints may reach it. He says you may reach it in meaning just like saints. So that's one point. And another point, so with this relation between physically or in meaning, I guess this is really important because so he doesn't say that, you know, they forget about the meaning, look at the physical aspect, or forget about the physical aspect, look at the meaning. He says if you can reach it physically, meaning if you can collect the reality, or if you can see the reality of things physically, I'm just giving an example, it doesn't have to be right in this context, but if you can travel the world, just travel the world. If this is, you know, how you're going to be just to yourself, just travel the world. But if you can reach it in meaning, so this part can be discussed a little bit more, I guess, but you can do it as well. Like, he doesn't say that there are different things or you should go after one of them. To me, there's multiple parts that needs to be more discussed, but to me what is important is the things as I call as physical, they are not any less miraculous than things that we usually attribute to saints or reaching to things in meaning. So we usually take physical things as, again, lightly, as if it's already there, but it becomes miraculous or it becomes really interesting when we reach a deeper meaning of something. As if just the just fact that I can hear someone, it's not miraculous enough. It's not enough to shake me and see the reality of the things and be just. Or as if just I'm able to make a cake out of flour and water. Even this is not miraculous enough to make me being just to my beloved ones. We usually say, "Oh yeah, but you should see a deeper understanding of making cake." So again, to me, the part is here. Just my take is the things that we take lightly and call as physical. They are there for a purpose, and they're just the action aspects of some sayings, of some words. In Quran we read some words, and in reality we see them as actions, the physically. So this is what I understand.
I want to go back to what Osman said earlier. Having multiple perspectives. I guess there's one perspective, that's Solomon's perspective. Reaching it physically, so to speak, and in meaning. So Solomon is able to both grasp the science of attraction, and he is able to demonstrate it, not by his own sort of power, but he's able to demonstrate it, and he's able to understand its meaning. Whereas I guess the perspective of one who is like Bilqis, or having Bilqis's perspective, is maybe you can't comprehend how it happens in the sense of the physical aspect per se, but you can understand what it means. To use a sort of modern example, maybe I don't understand, let's say astronomy or cosmology. I don't understand the intricacies of orbital rotation, or gravity, or anything of that sort, or how light travels. But I can still look up at the sky and the stars and the sun and somehow grasp a meaning. I don't have to have this sort of deep physical, it's like baking a cake. I don't have to have a deep physical understanding. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't make you appreciate or grasp even a deeper meaning into it, potentially, but it's not necessary. And that's why I think if they do not reach it physically, they may reach it at meeting like the saints, as you said. So it doesn't, things are not cut off from man. That's why there's, for example, going back to the attraction or the science of attraction, if you have two magnets, if you took the perspective of the magnets may not know how they're attracted to one another, but they're attracted. The opposite poles attract. They don't necessarily know how they're attracted. They just happen to be that way. In the same way, the human being, I guess, doesn't necessarily know how he is able to comprehend something. Like, how is it that I'm able to, obtain some meaning from something that I don't really fully physically comprehend, but I can comprehend its, its meaningful aspect. And I think it demonstrates that, that's really what is really the important aspect. Even if you don't understand the physical aspect of things, I don't have to understand physics, but I can understand what the physical nature of things mean, though. That's not, cut off from me. There's attraction still taking place, because that's where really the attraction is in meaning. not necessarily in the physical aspect of something, but what it means. That's what those two things are attracted. The one who's observing and the one being observed, I guess, is what's being attracted. That's kind of how I understood that sentence. I don't know if Asim had any thoughts or anybody, Berkan, anybody else, but that's kind of what I took away from that.
I think it's. I think the science of attraction, or the. I didn't quite really understand that phrase, but I assumed it was an assumption by the author of a mechanism of how this could have happened. So, I guess my question is, what are the assumptions that the author is making from the. I'm trying to figure out what are the assumptions in the interpretation that he's building upon, and that's just one thought I had. What assumptions is the author making in the interpretation?
I don't know. You can ask the author.
Well, he's not here. Because I think that the science of attraction is sort of almost a way of describing it, or an assumption of how it's thought that this is happening. And so,
what assumption does the author make?
Yeah, what assumptions is he making in his interpretations?
Are you asking this question because because of the word science?
Yeah, well, no, not because it's a science, but I mean, just because of the. So sort of what he's trying to say is that the ability to bring this somehow reflects the just, and then the paragraph below where he says the elusive tongue of the verse, that paragraph is sort of the interpretation of, he's saying it's as if it can be understood as if this is being said, and so inherently there's some assumption in how that transition happens. I'm trying to figure out what's the trying to tease it apart a little bit more.
Well, I don't. I mean, I don't really know if how Nursi understands, the mechanism of attraction. But I don't think that's necessarily Nursi's point. I think his point is that things do attract. That's obvious in the universe. Anybody can see that. I mean, he's speaking about some sort of, observation principle he's observing in the universe that the verse also, is pointing out. I think the question Nursi is saying is that, just as Solomon has been given the ability for this sort of principle to be demonstrated in his action, so too can you demonstrate it yourself. So, like I said, Nursi didn't have at least a modern way to understand the verse, but Nursi didn't have any sort of conception of, let's say, video or television, maybe audio, but those things. But that, in a way, is attraction. Nursi's point is that things are destined to come in contact with one another. You can't escape that. I can't escape the fact that, I'm in sort of communication with everything around me. I go outside, I'm in communication with my surroundings, with, plants, animals, other people, the environment, the atmosphere. It's impossible to escape that. There's some sort of attraction taking place. I can't, sort of separate myself from anything else. But I think Nursi's larger point is that, if you understand that this is taking place, maybe then can you sort of grasp what that means? Then you can maybe take into account, as Solomon did, all sort of perspectives of the universe, or perspectives of things that are happening. If you see that everything is being directed towards you, if everything is sort of attracting towards you, all the events are happening and you are able to perceive them. So in a sense, you are the center of everything. They're all coming towards you. you understand that sort of demonstration in the creation, then maybe you can, as Solomon did, you can hear and listen to all things if you understand that you're the center of those events from your own perspective. So to me, I think Nursi's that's kind of Nursi's broader point from this discussion. I know it's 9:33, and does anybody have any other? Awesome, go ahead.
Yeah, going back to that, the physically and the meaning part of the phrase. So now when I'm looking at it, I understand basically, the author says that the whole face of the earth is so vast, and as you were saying, man is at the center of everything. So potentially we are able to understand everything that is in the world, but then physically we may not be going into every little thing and examining and seeing, in this particular lab, this thing is happening, this experiment is looking at this particular, atom, and in another place, they're looking at maybe some other specimen of something. So physically, I may not be able to go to each and every little thing, but then in meaning, I can understand by looking at maybe a few things or within some things that are within my reach. I can come to that understanding and conclusion that, the whole earth kind of glorifies the one who has given it existence. So that's how I can be the vicegerent. Although physically I may not be able to go and investigate every little thing, but I can come to, from a particular specific thing, I can make that conclusion. So that's how I understood it now.
Yeah, that's what I took away, and I think that's what makes a prophet, and how one tries to sort of model oneself, one's humanity after, because the prophets understand themselves as being recipients of the one who has complete dominion and sovereignty of the universe. So how they understand that is, how they try to understand this absolute dominion and sovereignty is by trying to understand the meaning of all things at once. If one can understand it physically, that's great. But if not, then at least in meaning, as Nursi says, because that's really what I guess the essence of things are at the end of the day. That's what they're, we were talking about purpose, but that's really what the essential nature of things are. Not really their physical aspect, but what they mean, what they indicate. That's really what they're there for. Otherwise, what reason would the physical nature have to be? There's really no reason for it to be in one way or another, for the sun to be in that way or a different way. That it means something. That's why it has the existence it has.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.